Okay, let's dive in. We're unpacking a life today that, well, it's really a study in pure grit. Gene Hackman.
Absolutely. He's such a fascinating figure.
A total paradox, right?
Hmm.
Right at the heart of American film. You instantly know that faced tough, smart, definitely not glamorous.
Wised up.
Yeah, exactly. But somehow always the everyman, thrown into these crazy situations.
And he was a core part of that whole volatile New Hollywood thing.
But at the same time, so intensely private, really dedicated to this, well, non-Hollywood life he built.
That's the core tension, isn't it?
It is. So our mission here is to explore the sources we have on Eugene Allen Hackman, 1930, right through to 2025. And this isn't just like a list of his movies.
Well, not at all.
It's about looking at that relentless persistence, how it fueled this completely improbable career,
Yeah.
and then how that same drive got channeled into totally different things in retirement, quieter things,
Right. The writing, the architecture.
which all leads up to this profoundly private and, yeah, sadly, really tragic final chapter.
And what's so compelling when you look at the documentation is how his whole journey is defined by these powerful oppositions, just stark contrast.
Like what specifically?
Well, you've got the rigid discipline of the military versus this, artistic ambition he clearly had.
Okay.
You see the absolute bitterness of early failure. I mean, really failing, set against massive, undeniable success later on. And maybe most critically, that huge contrast between the, explosive intensity he brought to the screen
Oh, definitely.
and the absolute commitment he had to a quiet, very self-directed private life. We can actually trace those early rejections, those failures, directly to the kind of gritty intensity that became his signature on screen.
That makes sense. It forged him. So you really have to start
Yeah.
there, right? At the beginning of that climb, nothing about it was smooth. Born in San Bernardino, California in 1930, his early life immediately hit with instability. Trauma, even.
Yeah, the sources point clearly to this huge early rupture. Hackman was only 13 when his father just left, divorced his mother, Anna, and walked out on the family.
Wow, 13. That's rough.
And Anna, his mother, she sounds like this really creative person, an actress, a painter, a pianist, but she often had to work as a waitress just to scrape by. So you've got this environment of, well, emotional and financial insecurity.
A tough start.
And it gets compounded later. Sadly, Anna died tragically in 1962. It was an accidental fire, apparently started while she was smoking, so that early loss gets layered with more loss.
Man. Okay, so that instability, maybe that's what fuels the next big decision, the really dramatic one he makes at 16.
Seems likely. He leaves home looking for structure, maybe, and does the classic thing, lies about his age to enlist in the U.S. Marine Corps.
16.
16. He ends up serving 4.5 years as a field radio operator, and you can see how that experience probably cemented this lifelong thing he had for discipline, for process.
And it wasn't exactly quiet duty either, was it?
No, not at all. The source material gives us some amazing context here. He was actually deployed to China, specifically Qingdao and Shanghai,
When was this?
between 1947 and 1949. Part of something called Operation Beleaguer. This was right in the thick of it, the final, really brutal phase of the Chinese Civil War.
Okay, Operation Beleaguer, that's a key detail. What was the mission?
Essentially, it was a race against time. The Marines were tasked with destroying huge amounts of leftover Japanese military gear, planes, vehicles, weapons,
Right.
to keep it out of the hands of the communist revolutionaries who were advancing really fast. They didn't want that stuff turned against the U.S.-backed nationalist forces.
So imagine that. He's, what, 17, 18 years old?
Right. Stationed in these cities, basically falling apart from civil war, carrying out demolition orders, surrounded by just immense tension and chaos.
That kind of experience, that blend of military precision and total chaos, it must have built some serious internal steel.
You'd think so. Hard to imagine a movie director intimidating you much after going through something like that.
Right. So after he gets discharged in 51, he tries studying journalism, TV production on the GI Bill for a bit. But that acting bug, or maybe, like you said, needing a new target for that psychological warfare thing, it pulls him back west. 1956, he enrolls at the Pasadena Playhouse.
And this is where that legendary connection happens. At the Playhouse, he meets and becomes friends with two other guys also struggling, also dreaming of acting, Dustin Hoffman and Robert Duvall.
The famous outsider trio.
Exactly. And they bonded over, well, not success, but being broke and having their instructors basically tell them they had no future.
Yeah, the sources are brutal on this. Hackman and Hoffman were literally voted the least likely to succeed by their classmates.
Can you imagine?
And it gets worse. The documentation says Hackman got the lowest score the Pasadena Playhouse had ever given anyone. Statistically the worst actor they'd ever had, basically.
But again, think about his background, that rejection. It wasn't defeat for him. It was fuel. The humiliation just kept coming.
Like the story about the Howard Johnsons.
Right. He's working there, and an instructor sees him and basically sneers that, this proves he'll never amount to anything. Another time, a Marine officer saw him working as a doorman and said something similar, just constant put-downs.
And his reaction?
Pure defiance. He talked about his persistence not as a lofty artistic calling, but as psychological warfare. Against everyone who doubted him, he said he wouldn't let those people get him down. He'd do whatever it took to get a job.
That need to struggle. He even called it a narcotic.
That's such a powerful way to put it. It wasn't just about fame or money. It was about proving he could endure, proving them wrong, and that grit takes him and Hoffman and Duvall to New York.
Right. The outsider trio moves east, sharing cheap apartments, taking any odd job.
Scraping by, but also pushing each other, that competitive fire.
And eventually, slowly, it starts to pay off. On stage, at least. Years of bit parts off Broadway stuff. Then finally, a big hit. Broadway, 1964, a play called Any Wednesday.
And that success seems to be the launching pad he needed for film.
His first credited movie role comes pretty quick after that, Lilith in 64.
But even then, one more public humiliation almost trips him up.
The Graduate.
The Graduate. He gets cast as Mr. Robinson, the older man, but Mike Nichols, the director, fires him 3 weeks into rehearsal. Decides Hackman looks too young for the part.
The irony is just staggering, because what happens right after that?
Immediately after. He plays Buck Burrow in Bonnie and Clyde later that same year, 1967.
A seminal film.
Absolutely. And that role gets him his first Academy Award nomination, Best Supporting Actor.
So in the span of, 12 months? He goes from being fired for being too young to an Oscar nomination.
That just sets the stage, doesn't it? High stakes, high risk, and boom, immediate proof he belonged.
And it's amazing how quickly he makes that jump. From scene-stealing supporting guy to defining the whole feel of new Hollywood cinema. Almost overnight.
Yeah, the transition from great supporting actor to genuine leading man is really swift.
His first big nod in the 70s is another supporting actor nomination, right? For I Never Sang for My Father in 1970.
Mm-hmm. Playing opposite Melvin Douglas. And even then, the key thing people noted was his authenticity. Roger Ebert wrote about it, saying the performances felt like the story was happening right now.
No visible acting. Just being.
Exactly. A testament to how he could just live inside a character without showing the seams.
But the role that really launches him into the stratosphere, that's got to be Popeye Doyle.
Oh, absolutely. Detective Jimmy Popeye Doyle, William Friedkin's The French Connection, 1971. That film was a game changer. So gritty, so immediate.
And Hackman's performance is just electric. Reckless, intense.
And it nets him his first Best Actor Oscar. The critics loved it. Variety pointed out how believable he and Roy Scheider were as these hard-nosed narcotics officers, but also overworked, tired, and mean. He didn't play Doyle like some kind of clean-cut hero. Doyle was desperate, often bigoted, broke rules.
Yeah, a real anti-hero before that term was even common currency.
Totally. And suddenly, his star power just explodes. He becomes one of the most prolific guys out there. The sources show, right after French Connection, he stars in 10 movies in just 3 years.
10 films in 3 years. That's insane. That narcotic of struggle you mentioned.
Yeah.
Clearly still in effect.
Oh, yeah. And the range during that period is incredible. He's in the big disaster hit, The Poseidon Adventure in 72.
Yeah.
But more importantly, critically, he stars in 2 films back-to-back that really cement his new Hollywood icon status. And both won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, which is remarkable.
Okay, which ones?
First, there's the road movie Scarecrow in 1973 with Al Pacino.
Ah, yeah.
And this one's important because Hackman himself often said this role, Max Millen, the gentler, kind of goofy character, was his personal favorite role ever.
Interesting. He liked playing against type, maybe.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
He clearly valued the complexity of playing someone less overtly intense. And then right after that, he does The Conversation.
Coppola's masterpiece, 1974. Playing Harry Call, the surveillance expert.
If Popeye Doyle was all external rage, Harry Call is all internal. Just stifled paranoia and terror. It's such a clinical, brilliant look at post-Watergate anxiety.
And what's amazing is the same year he does Harry Call, that incredibly dense psychological role he also does.
Harold the Blind Man.
In Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein. A cameo. But so perfectly timed. So funny. just proved he could land a huge laugh just as easily as he could chill you to the bone.
That range, intensity, subtlety, timing it let him step into blockbusters, too, without seeming out of place, like Lex Luthor.
Right, in Superman in '78.
Yeah, and the reviews noted his effective light touch. He made Luthor funny, but not like a cartoon villain. He played him twice more after that. It showed he could balance the serious, artistic stuff with huge commercial hits.
We should probably acknowledge, though, with that much work, not everything was gold.
Oh, for sure. There were flops, like that musical Lucky Lady in '75.
Yeah.
With Burt Reynolds and Liza Minnelli. That one kind of famously tanked.
Right. Even the greats have off days.
Exactly. But moving into the 80s and 90s, his defining trait becomes consistency. Just solid work, film after film. Alan Parker, who directed him in Mississippi Burning, he called Hackman the quintessential movie actor. Parker talked about his extraordinary economy, how he refused to be showy. He could convey so much history, so much conflict with just a tiny shift or a look.
That economy must have been essential during his busiest period.
Yeah.
What was it, the mid-'80s?
Yeah, between 85 and 88, he starred in 9 films. 9 made him one of the hardest working actors, period.
And that includes Hoosiers, right? 1986.
The basketball coach. The iconic Hoosiers. Still beloved. AFI ranked it the 4th greatest sports film ever back in 2008. It holds up.
The recognition kept coming, too. Another Oscar nomination for Mississippi Burning in '88. Best Actor.
Playing that FBI agent investigating the civil rights murders, again, capturing the complexity of a guy caught between institutional problems and just brutal violence.
But the real capstone of that second act, maybe his whole career in terms of demonstrating that economy, comes in '92. Unforgiven.
Little Bill Daggett. The sheriff.
It's sadistic sheriff.
And this role is fascinating because it reveals that tension between his personal ethics and his art. The sources say Hackman had actually sworn off playing really violent characters by then.
So how did Eastwood convince him?
Eastwood personally talked him into it, appealed to the film's moral complexity maybe, because Little Bill, he's casually cruel, he's brutal, but he thinks he's completely justified.
Yeah, he's terrifying because he's so mundane about it.
Exactly. And that performance won him his second Oscar, this time for Best Supporting Actor. The film cleaned up. Little Bill is the perfect example of that economy. He's not some screaming lunatic. He's just a guy wielding violence like it's paperwork. Grounded and utterly chilling.
And he just kept going through the '90s, right across the board. The Firm, Crimson Tide.
Crimson Tide with Denzel Washington. Great submarine tension there.
Get Shorty. And then that brilliant comedic turn in The Birdcage.
As the conservative Senator Keeley, hilarious. Just pure comic frustration. He showed that incredible range and consistency right up until he decided to step back.
So after basically 5 decades working at that incredible pace, Hackman plans this sort of grand finale, which was maybe a bit unexpected, playing Royal Tenenbaum.
Right. In Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums in 2001, the flawed, charismatic con man patriarch.
And it was brilliant. He won a Golden Globe for Best Actor for it.
It really showed he could shift gears completely, from all those tough authority figures to someone so vulnerable, so selfish, but also desperate for connection. His last actual film role was the comedy Welcome to Mooseport in 2004.
And the decision to retire, it wasn't like a gradual fade out. It was pretty definite and driven by something specific.
Yeah, he started talking about it around 2004, but he made it official in 2008, and he cited a specific health scare. He talked about undergoing a stress test in New York. And the doctor was apparently very clear. His heart just couldn't take the stress and pressure of a movie set anymore. It wasn't safe. So stepping away became, well, a health necessity.
And he had that great line later in a 2011 interview about what it would take to get him back.
Oh, yeah, the joke. He said he'd only come back if I could do it in my own house, maybe, without them disturbing anything and just 1 or 2 people.
That says it all, doesn't it? A Hollywood legend basically saying, leave me alone in my quiet life.
But here's the thing, retirement didn't mean stopping. You see that core character again. The guy who needed the struggle, the narcotic, he just redirects all that energy.
Into writing.
Exactly. He shifts focus completely, starts writing historical fiction, thrillers.
He teamed up with an undersea archaeologist, Daniel Linehan, right?
Yeah, they co-wrote 3 historical novels. And you see that same love for historical grit in the subjects. Like Escape from Andersonville about the Civil War prison camp.
It tracks, doesn't it? Thinking about the moral complexity in roles like Popeye Doyle or Little Bill.
Totally. His writing deals a lot with moral ambiguity, historical trauma, violence. One of their books, Justice for None, was based on a real crime from his own boyhood town, Danville. He's taking that dramatic tension from the screen and putting it on the page.
And he wrote solo, too.
Yeah. Payback at Morning Peak, an Old West story, came out in 2011. Then a police thriller, Pursuit, in 2013. And he still used his voice narrating documentaries. Some for the NFL, America's Game.
And some about the Marines, right? Showing that loyalty.
Exactly. 2 documentaries about the Marine Corps, keeping that connection alive.
Beyond the writing, he had these other passions, too, that really showed that inner drive. Cars, for instance.
Oh, yeah, he was a serious automotive guy, or racer.
He competed in Sports Car Club of America races. And what kind of cars?
Open-wheeled Formula Ford cars,
Yeah.
which, if you know racing, that's intense stuff. Entry level, but demands incredible precision, discipline, control.
Sounds like the Marines again.
Very much so. And he was good. He actually won the Long Beach Toyota Pro Celebrity Race back in 1980. Even drove in the 24 Hours of Daytona Endurance Race in 83.
Wow. And that same passion for precision, for control,
Yeah.
it extended to architecture.
Massively. The documentation confirms he designed and built 10 homes over his life. 10. And 2 of them were featured in Architectural Digest. This is where that paradox really clicks.
How so?
Well, someone asked him why he kept finishing a house restoration and immediately moving on to the next one. And his answer was so revealing. He said, I guess I like the process, and when it's over, it's over.
The process, not the product.
Exactly. The film, the house, the race. Maybe those were secondary. It was the act of creation, the intellectual and physical effort. That sounds like the guy who called the struggle his narcotic, right?
Absolutely. It's all about the doing.
And he kept physically active, too. He was an avid cyclist, even into his 90s. He actually got hit by a pickup truck while biking in Florida in 2012.
Oh, my God. Was he okay?
Yeah, luckily just minor injuries, but cycling into his 90s, again, that relentless energy.
And politically, the sources mention some interesting nuances.
Right. Generally supported the Democrats, was apparently quite proud to be on Nixon's enemies list.
A badge of honor back then.
Definitely. But he also spoke fondly of Ronald Reagan, the Republican president. So not easily pigeonholed, complex off-screen, too.
And his family life. He remarried later on.
Yeah, he was married to Faye Maltese from 1956 to 1986. They had 3 children. After their divorce in 1991, he married Betsy Arakawa, a classical pianist.
And he settled in Santa Fe, right? That's where they built that really private life.
Exactly, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Their home there, which blended Southwestern styles, was one of the ones featured in Architectural Digest. It really highlights the sanctuary they created together, far away from the Hollywood scene.
Okay, so moving into this final chapter, it requires a bit of care. That intense privacy they cultivated, Hackman and Arakawa, it ended up creating a really tragic situation at the end.
It really did. And this part of the story, it brings up some difficult questions about caregiving, about isolation, especially when cognitive decline is involved and something unexpected happens. The documentation paints a really heartbreaking picture of those last months in Santa Fe.
Declining health, less contact with the outside world.
Exactly. And then we get to the specific events of February 2025. Betsy Arakawa, who had essentially become Hackman's sole caregiver in their quite isolated home, she was last seen alive on February 11th.
Okay.
The next day, February 12th, she apparently called a doctor, said she was having severe breathing problems, made an appointment, but she never made it to that appointment.
Oh, no.
We know now she died in their home shortly after that call. The cause was later confirmed as hantavirus pulmonary syndrome.
Hantavirus. From rodents.
Yeah, a severe respiratory illness you can get from exposure to infected rodents or their droppings, often fatal.
And Hackman.
Yeah.
What happened with him?
Well, the documentation strongly suggests that because of his advanced Alzheimer's disease, he wasn't able to comprehend that his wife had died, or, consequently, seek any help for himself. He was completely dependent on her for his own care.
So he was alone and unaware.
It seems so. He died himself around February 18th, just days after Betsy, at age 95. The primary cause was severe heart disease, but complicated by the Alzheimer's and also kidney failure. They actually pinpointed the approximate date from data recovered from his pacemaker. It recorded an abnormal rhythm around then.
And they weren't found immediately.
No, it was a full week later, February 26th. An acquaintance hadn't heard from them, got worried, and requested a welfare check. That's when the bodies of Hackman, Arakawa, and one of their dogs were discovered.
God, that's awful.
It is. And because of the circumstances, 2 bodies, found days later, the authorities initially treated it as suspicious, launched a full investigation, though ultimately it was confirmed they died separately from natural causes.
And the tragedy just kept unfolding, didn't it, with the legal situation around their estate?
Right. That became very public, very complicated. The estate was estimated around $80 million, and Hackman's will, written way back in 1995, named Betsy Arakawa as his sole heir. It specifically, deliberately, omitted his 3 children from his first marriage.
Okay, so everything went to Betsy.
But here's the twist. Betsy's own will had a specific clause. It said if she and Jean died within 90 days of each other, which they did, then her entire estate, which now included all of Jean's assets.
You wouldn't go to his kids.
Correct. It would bypass them entirely and go to charity instead. So the courts had to step in to sort all that out, make sure the wills were interpreted correctly, given the tragic timing.
And even in death, that fierce privacy instinct remained. His estate fought to keep investigation details private.
They did. Formally requested the courts block the release of things like police body cam footage, just reinforcing that deep desire to keep their final moments shielded from public view.
Despite that privacy, though, the public reaction, the tributes, they were huge. His legacy was immediately front and center.
Oh, absolutely. His peers really spoke about his impact. Clint Eastwood, who knew that intensity firsthand.
What did he say?
He praised him as intense and instinctive, never a false note, which feels spot on.
Yeah. And Coppola, who directed the conversation.
Francis Ford Coppola called him a great actor, inspiring and magnificent in his work and complexity. And Morgan Freeman, at the Oscars, he honored Hackman, saying anyone who worked with him knew how generous he was, how he elevated everyone else in the scene.
That's high praise.
It is, and critically, his death felt like the end of an era. Peter Bradshaw at The Guardian wrote that Hackman's passing marked the end of American New Wave cinema, called him really a star, in fact, the star of every scene he was in, capturing that whole blend of realism and danger from that time.
And the final tangible pieces, the auction.
Right. In October 2025, Bonhams announced they were auctioning his personal stuff. Scripts, his art collection, movie memorabilia, even 3 of his Golden Globe trophies. Kind of a poignant physical end to a life lived so intensely both in public and in private.
So we've looked at this guy who built this legendary career playing these really complex, tough, often conflicted men. He reached the absolute pinnacle of Hollywood.
But his deepest drive always seemed rooted in that Marine Corps discipline, that almost psychological need to fight, to endure.
So what does it all mean? That this incredibly public, relentless professional, the guy who literally called struggle his drug ultimately sought and found, his peace, doing things like architecture, just riding his bike in Santa Fe.
I think it suggests that relentless drive never actually went away. It found new targets, less stressful ones, maybe.
The process itself.
Exactly. His final ambition seemed to be about the pure, undistracted process, whether that was meticulously designing and building a house, or crafting a novel about moral struggle, or even just the simple process of cycling down a road without a camera crew around.
He proved that the Marine's grit and the actor's intensity could transform into the quiet persistence of a craftsman.
Yeah. Finding his greatest expression, perhaps, in deliberately creating a life completely removed from the spotlight he once commanded,